Hello and welcome to episode number 81 of the Product Biz podcast. My name is Monica Little. I'm your host, and today we are talking all things Instagram, helping you get re-inspired with special guest Attaliah Strubel. So when you learn about that Instagram algorithm, that can help you get more views, and this is something you're going to hear Attaliah say. But views don't always translate to sales, and I love when she said that. So you might be wondering, well, what actually does lead to more sales from all the time that we spend on social media? And Natalia shares with you how to use storytelling, how to show up authentically, how to connect with your audience with behind the scenes content and more so you can sell more of your products through Instagram. She's also going to talk us through some of the top Instagram mindset blocks that hold most small business owners back. Things like the fear of stumbling our words, or the fear of being judged by others, or the fear of posting a poll on our stories that no one engages with. So you can let go of those old limiting beliefs and really just show up the best version of you, excited, re-inspired, and amped to be on Instagram and to be connecting with your customers. She's also going to share with us some hashtag and posting strategy with you too. So you're going to get some great content here from her to overall just round out the Instagram strategy that you have for the rest of this year. A little bit about Attaliah. She is a business coach specializing in passive income and content monetization. She's on a mission to help women break free from their screens and build thriving online businesses. She's all about empowering women to not only reach their goals, but also live their dream lives. Through her coaching sessions, online resources, and inspiring speaking engagements, she's dedicated to guide women toward fulfilling careers and lifestyles that they truly deserve. So let's bring her on, and I can't wait for you to listen to this week's episode. Welcome, Attaliah, to the Product Biz Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Monica.
This is going to be such a fun conversation. I'm so excited to learn more about you, about Instagram and your expertise and the strategy that you recommend for small business owners to use on Instagram. But before we dive into there, we'd love to just hear more about you. So share your background to the listeners so we can know how you got to where you are today.
So I actually am a NICU nurse by trade, and I kind of got into social media by Googling. Maybe a lot of you probably Google different things. I Googled how to make money online. Blogging popped up. I was like, okay, I can do this. My husband and I, we travel. Maybe this is something I can do. And then from there, I ended up going and being like, okay, I started my travel blog in February of 2020. And we all know the world shut down in March. So there's no way a travel blog can sustain. And instead I switched to how can I grow my platform? At that point, I had about 900 followers, and I was like, let me just grow, because the goal was to work with tourism boards and, have that type of lifestyle. And so I was like, okay, like, what am I going to do? And then fast forward to Instagram Reels coming out, and just like really figuring out that I actually like the marketing side and not really the fact of me sharing my travels. And although it was just a portion of me, but I really got into really trying out and testing things on Instagram and really understanding what got people to convert. And so in November of 2020, I was on a box, did an interview with a multi-million-dollar company to run their social media. And I landed that gig, and it was $3,000 a month. And I was like, oh my gosh, like my business is making it. You're at that point where it's like, I have consistent income coming in, and I was moving to Germany. And in working with them, I learned so much, but also the number one thing that I learned was that we are no different than these big businesses. The only difference is they're doing it. They're putting it in works. They're actually trying and testing stuff. And so it was just incredible to be able to test not only on my page, but to test this brand who had over, I think, 200,000 followers, and kind of test and see what worked. And I noticed that a lot of things that worked for small businesses work also for larger businesses. It's just a matter of applying them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. I love hearing your story of how you pivoted. Because I think so many people can relate. And I was in a very same situation where I left my corporate job January of 2020, and then the world closed a couple months later. So that really was the year of like pivoting and finding out different ways to continue to, especially if you're an entrepreneur, to continue to grow and be able to pay for rent during a time where like the world is closed, right? So love hearing how you pivoted and loved hearing how you started to just learn and test and grow and got some awesome results. So tell me a little bit about when we talk about Reels and Instagram and everything that we've learned, are there any specific strategies if we start really high level on what works? What works to connect with people? What works to get people to want to buy your products? How do we really use Instagram from that lens?
So, what really works is storytelling. So, what is setting anybody apart from anyone is your story. And so, when it comes to product based businesses, I don't only want to see the vase you have, because what differentiates your vase from a vase that I can get in Target? Like, shouldn't I just go to Walmart and go get this vase? Or why shouldn't I shop at Shein? So think about whatever it is, that product that you have, and talk about your unique angle and your unique story and sell it from a story perspective. Because at the end of the day, right, people connect with people. And I may buy something more expensive, and I have in the past. I will buy something more expensive because I know the story. And another way, and I think another thing that's missing a lot of the times with product based businesses is taking people on the journey. You can't just show up with your product and then expect all these people to start buying from you. Like, it needs to be that journey. And I always go back to before I was in social media, and I was just following, and there's this girl, Ashley, Everyday Pursuits, and I followed her, and she was creating a swim line with Space. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh my God, this is so amazing. Like, and I had never shopped Space. I just really loved her content, and I connected with her and her story. And in connecting with her and her story, when she started to bring this product to place, it was like you would watch her stories and she would show you how she was making stuff, or you could pick what colors you wanted. So don't be afraid to include your community in building whatever the product you have available for them. And then I also love, like, you just felt at the end of it. I bought the swimsuit. I bought, like, I think it was like $120 swimsuit. I had never spent that much money on a swimsuit, but I had gone through that process with her, and I felt that the swimsuit was made for me. So
Mm.
that is really the key for business owners when you have those products, and how you can really differentiate yourself, because people are watching. Even if they don't vote or they don't answer the polls, they're watching and they're seeing how you're making this item, and they're like, oh my God, this sounds so interesting. And I think a lot of the times too, one thing that really works is the behind the scenes, like
Mhm.
showcasing how you creating the product, you doing that. And a lot of the times people don't like to do that because they feel that, like, oh, if I show somebody how to make it, they're going to make it themselves. At the end of the day, somebody's still going to buy it. It's the same reason that we all go to restaurants. We can all make a burger ourselves, but we're going to go to
Yep.
the restaurant and go buy the burger because it's convenient. And so buying from you is more convenient. Even you see the people that are doing their DIYs and remaking furniture, right? And you're just like going through, and I save the videos. I send them to my husband. I'm like, let's do this. We have 2 IKEA desks in here. Like, we have 2 IKEA things that we were going to DIY, and it hasn't been done, right? And
Mhm.
it's because it's really going through the strategy of that storytelling, and then the vulnerability, and then the behind the scenes. So combination of those things is what works when it comes to converting your content. But one thing that a lot of people really focus on is the algorithm, right? The
Mhm.
big scary algorithm is the number one thing. People come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, like the algorithm. And when you create from an algorithm happy place, you're not going to see conversions. You may see viewerships. You may have lots of views, like, oh my God, the video had so many views. But when you're a business owner, the views are a portion, right? Like, it's like, oh, I'm getting this awareness of my brand, but what you want is that conversion. Like, I want
Yeah.
somebody to come on my page, see my offers, and be like, oh my God, I'm going to buy that. And the way that you ignite that in your page is by being authentically you and
Mhm.
being different and seeing how you can do things differently. So a couple of ways, like if you're a product-based business, is to really hone in on the story component along with the behind the scenes and
Mhm.
consistency in the steps that you take each day. And it literally can be as simple as every morning you do a to-do list and you tell us what you're doing inside of your business, because then people get to see like, oh my God, she works so hard on different things she's doing. And people will come to you and maybe they're just like looking, but people will be like, oh my gosh, I saw that she was creating this new product, and kind of doing like a day in the life from a product based business perspective. That's not something that's
Yeah.
done a lot, and it should be done because that kind of content converts. And from an algorithm and like the key things that are really hopping right now, I guess, are obviously the 7-second videos. We've all heard it, 5 to 7 second videos, and really the wording, like having your wording on your video. Most of the people listen to videos without sound. So even if you have the prettiest product and you're just showcasing the product, and maybe you have like words, not words, but you're speaking in the background, like nobody's listening, use CapCut, have it
Mhm.
very in your face so people can see what it is you're offering. Remember that we're like 2 second, we have 2 second brains, right? We're like scrolling, 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 stop, and then including that call to action. So once you give somebody and you say like, here's what my product is, then tell them like, how can they get the product? And you can even do content that's based on that. Like if you haven't already, come check out our website. Here's what things are on our website, and going through the website and really thinking about how you can make it a no-brainer for people to come in, see your page and be like, oh my God, I want to go get that and buy it. And so
Yeah.
that's just a couple of things to definitely do. I would say too, hashtag strategy wise, is ensuring that you utilize at least seven. I've been using 7 hashtags and being very specific. So these are long tail hashtags, meaning that they're longer words, they're more specific. So let's say you have a cup business where it's different cups, like what type of cups? Like it can be like sorority mugs, or, just kind of really getting specific on what it is and what somebody would search, because Instagram is really getting in a place of wanting to be part of that SEO. So in getting into that SEO, they're going to be looking at those keywords. So not only using those keywords in your hashtags, but also in your caption.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So many good insights. Like I was taking notes and we're going to unpack some of what you said because this is so much good stuff. So, first thing I want to ask you, I love how you said showing behind the scenes and taking people on the journey. I think that is so important. And I think it's very helpful for people who are on Instagram, which most of us are, to alleviate some of the pressure of what do I need to share today? What do I need to share today? What do I need to share today? Well, share what you're doing, share what you're working on, share the projects, share the orders you're packing, share that behind the scenes so people can see like the raw and real of what's going on. So, a question that I want to ask you, some people I know in their product business, when we talk about behind the scenes, they just don't love their making space, or they're in their kitchen, or they don't have like a dedicated space for their business. So they feel awkward or like a little insecure about sharing the raw and real behind the scenes of where they're actually making their products, or they think it's messy, it's not put together. What advice would you give to that person when we're talking about the importance of behind the scene, but they're saying, I don't like my space, it's too messy, I'm embarrassed to show this? What would you tell that person?
I would say go from an angle of power. So say like, you know what, guys, I'm going to be sharing videos of me and my workspace, and I'm currently growing my business, and this is the beginning. And I don't want to skip out on sharing this with you because of how I feel about it. So be open and vulnerable to your audience. Like let them know like, oh my God, this is like my space, and it might be small, but this is where we're starting, because people want to grow and start with you. And then one day when you have the big, beautiful office, then you can kind of just be like, oh my gosh, remember that time? And I think that's one of the things that I regret most in growing a business in the journey, is not taking enough photos or videos of me like trying or me getting into it. And so think of it as this is the beginning spot and it's not the end for you. But if you
Mhm.
can't show people where you are in the beginning, then it's going to be harder to show them. You're going to come off as somebody like, oh, well, she just woke up one day, made this business, and now it's growing, but they don't know where you started. And people really love, love, love to start with you.
And I love how you said the word vulnerability of being like, yeah, hey, this is my space. I know it's a little messy right now, or it's a little small, or this is what we're working with. And I think too, people can actually connect with that. So a lot of times we think, oh, I don't want people to see this, but when they see it, they're like, yep, that's how my room looks like too. That's how my house is. That's how I'm making my products. And specifically when you said the word vulnerability, I'm like, that totally makes sense because you mentioned that earlier: story, vulnerability, and behind the scenes. And story and behind the scenes, those make sense. But for me, I'm like, vulnerability, what does that really mean? How can that work for a product business? So I want to ask you that too. And I love how what we just talked about is one component of it, showing where
Mm-hmm.
you are, the raw and real. But how else can we approach vulnerability for people who have a product-based business?
So I had a boutique client, and one thing that we tested out, like just to see if it was something that would work, was she would put her goals. So if you're somebody that has goals, and I do this every single month, I've been doing it all year, and putting your goals and being vulnerable with what you want to achieve. So even if it's something that's like smaller and you're starting off, right? And you're like, "Oh, I want 10 sales from my website. I want, this, I want to make $500 from X product." And it's just being vulnerable about your goals and where you want to be in business. And when you kind of talk about it, you're just kind of like, it sounds kind of silly, right? But it's really crazy how many people, not only for my types of posts, but for that boutique client, how many people really interacted with that post and liked that post. And even people were like, oh, I ended up buying from your website. I saw that was one of your goals. And, like people just want to support you where you're at. So that is one way that you can kind of show that vulnerability. And another way is in going into your story, really going and talking about how you started. And I think when you have like a product based business, you're just kind of like, no, people are buying the product, but they're buying from that person, right? You think of these things that you buy. So one thing that I love is one of my friends owns a baby shop. And anytime someone is celebrating their baby shower, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta go shop at her shop because I know her. I could get the blankets from somewhere else that was more convenient, but it's because I know her and I know her story, and she shares her story about infertility. And I'm like, oh my God, like I connect with you in that way. And because of that, now I am your like number one customer. And I also have friends then that I'm like, buy them this gift. And then now they're buying from the shop too. So really having a strong why to your business and vocalizing that why in a vulnerable way, like really getting deep, and it not being just, oh, I just one day just decided to start this business, but like, where were you at when you started it, and what pushed you to go through it, and what's pushing you to continue to do it?
Such a good answer. I love that. And when we talk about sharing our story, I think that's so important. And I think one thing people struggle with is they share their story once and then they're like, okay, I had a post about this last year. I talked about it, and then they never talk about it again. And this is something I hear from people a lot, especially with a product business, because we may have 10 products that we're talking about over and over and over, or we have our one origin story of how we started. So, how do you really coach people who are like, I feel like I'm repeating myself? I feel like I'm saying the same things. What would you say to that person?
I always like to write down. So, write down your entire story in a Google Doc, or if you're a writer, you can journal your entire story, and just like with all of the ups and the downs and the extras, right? And then each time tell a different portion of your
Ooh.
story. And so, what I mean by that is one of my brand stories is I met my husband in Thailand, and now like my life just totally flipped upside down, right? And so each time I tell the story, I tell a different portion. So I'll tell it from the beginning, like I missed a flight, which led me to my husband. And sometimes I'll even go even further back, like I failed the NCLEX. And because of that, I ended up getting a job and meeting a friend and ended up going to Thailand, right? And so telling different portions of your story, because each story has a beginning, middle, and end. And when you write that all out, if you're somebody who's like, oh my God, I keep repeating myself, then I encourage you to sit down, and it will take time, but write your story like unfiltered, how you feel about it. And then now just go through and highlight stuff and be like, okay, like I can talk about this portion. Or maybe you see things and you're like, wait, I've never talked about that time where I started to sell and it didn't really work out for me. Or that time I thought I was going to sell, I know, cups, and now I'm selling microphones. Like, thinking about different pieces of your story and really just sitting down and doing that inner work with yourself.
Beautiful. I love it. Yeah. It's like an accordion, right? You can take your story and extrapolate it. You can make it bigger. You can condense it down. I love that, to share it from different angles. I think that's super, super helpful. Okay. The next thing that you talked about, you mentioned consistency, and I love this. So you specifically said, hey, if you're showing up on your stories every single day, sharing your to-do list, people start to expect that. I want to talk a little bit about consistency too, in terms of what do you recommend for how often to show up on social media, for posts, for stories? What do you recommend?
So I am a firm believer in not forcing content. And I mean, it might be backwards for somebody who helps people monetize off content, but I create when I'm inspired. And so the way that I do that is I utilize my notes app when different ideas come up, or if you have a product that's doing well, or you have a post that's doing well, then that's when I like write out my thoughts and I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to be talking about. And then the way that I format it is honestly based on where I'm at. So with a product business, basically all the time you're selling, right? And so you want to think to yourself, like, what things do you have to do behind the scenes and in order to get the sales, right? Because I think a lot of the times you think, oh, I have to post on Instagram. I got to post on Instagram. But if there's like orders that you need to finish and then you don't have time to post on Instagram, that comes priority because that's customer service. And so I say at least 3 times a week for you to post on your feed. When people are starting out, I encourage them to do one reel, one carousel, one static post. And then I before would go live. So instead of, I would either do a static post or a carousel, and then I would go live once a week. And this can be really powerful for a product based business, just to go live and just talk about what it is, or like, package orders with me, like let's chat. And then while you're chatting with them, like talk about different ways, like different things you have coming up, like any questions they may have. Or you can even go through and say, like, here's this product, I'm packaging it. And I've even seen this on TikTok a lot too, where people go live and they're like, so and so's order, I'm making it. And then they'll like go live and show that they're making the order. And I think that's really just putting them a part of the process. Um, that was a tangent, but anyway, so
Good,
three
good.
three times. And then on stories, I would show up Monday through Friday, every day on stories. Now, when you show up on stories, you don't need 80 billion stories a day. Okay. It's fine to have like 4 or 5, up to 8. It's okay. You don't need to literally like be like, oh, I'm on stories today. And now all of your things has all of those little tiny ticks where you've spent the whole day on stories, like, cause you won't get anything done. Um, and then as far as, going, so then I like to also like, so I do stories. And then if you're posting on other platforms, so like most likely if you're like product based business, you're doing like Pinterest and doing all this other stuff. And so in doing that, what I like to do is take the core content concepts and just repurpose them onto my other platforms. And then I also repurpose the content that I have into my email too.
Yeah, beautiful. I love it. And I love how you said that you don't force content and you wait until you're really inspired. So, how do you personally get inspired? What if you're feeling a little bit of an Instagram rut of like, okay, it's been a week and I haven't been inspired. What do you do to get in that inspired creative mode to create content?
Honestly, I feel like not doing anything that has to do with content. I like
Yeah.
watch TV,
Yeah.
like, go on a walk, spend time, think about the things that fuel you and bring you energy. And if it brings you energy, it's going to bring you inspiration. Like
Mhm.
I can watch The Office and like be like, "Oh my god, this would be great for content." And it's like just comes up. And it's okay if you don't have like a content brain and things just like come up for you. Like it can be something where you think about different things that are going on in your life and then relate them into your product. So, what kinds of things are you enjoying right now in life? And if it's something like, oh my gosh, like I'm enjoying cooking right now, but your product doesn't have to do with cooking, then it's like, how can you tie those together? Like, it's a time to like have fun with it and be
Mhm.
like, okay, come talk to me about my business while I cook. And it's like everyone cooks, and then people are going to be on there. What are you cooking? And then just getting really interactive. And I think one thing that people don't do when you're in a rut, and I do this quite a bit, I will go to my insights and see posts in the past that have performed well. And I will literally take the exact post and repost it and like copy everything and just repost it and then just let it be. And just to see, because I mean, people are coming in and out of your world all the time. So, it's a moment to kind of test and see like what's working, how your community has changed, and you can reuse videos. I think a lot of the times people feel like people already saw this, but if you go to your insights, you can see on there the percentage of people that are following you that are actually seeing your content. And it's going to actually surprise you how many people are not seeing your content.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I think to summarize what you said, it's like permission to take a break, right? If you're not
Yes.
inspired, take a break. Permission to repurpose content. I think so many people don't take advantage of that. If you're not inspired, give yourself that week to do what you love to do and just repurpose some stuff. And then also, I love how you said like, it's basically permission to be messy. Like test around. If you're inspired by cooking, share how you're cooking and tie it in and see what comes from it. So I think that is just really valuable information that people will really love to hear. So that takes me to my next question. When we're talking about really like showing up, especially on the story side, how you said, it's good to show up Monday through Friday. And I love how you said it doesn't need to be 80 stories, it can be a couple, it can be 4 or 5. Um, I personally think stories is a really good place to show more of your face and more of your voice so people get to know you. So I want to know if you agree with that. And then I also want to know what would you say to someone who's struggling with that, who's like, but I don't like how I look on camera. I don't know what to say. What if I fumble my words? What if I don't like my voice? What advice would you give to that person for showing up on their stories?
So I definitely agree with you. Stories is definitely a place to show the behind the scenes. I like to call them stickers. You're going to show the different stickers of your life. Like that's where you can show your dog or like your house, whatever it is that you want to share on stories. It's that place that you can just really connect on a deeper level. And I would say if you're somebody that's like, oh my gosh, I don't like my voice, y'all, I do not like my voice. And I actually have a podcast. And what I started to do when I first started doing stories was I would turn the volume down. So, like, I would record my story, then turn the volume down, and then type out what it was. And if I forgot, then I would turn it up just to listen to what I was saying so that I could write that caption out. And now there's the ability on Instagram for you to do like the caption wording, and just don't listen to it. Like some of the times, I mean, this might sound bad, but like even with my podcast, I just won't listen. I'll just record it and I'll just be like, okay, like it's done. Like people can listen to it. And it's because that's a you thing. Like no one's judging you for the way that you're showing up, and the people that are for you are for you. And if somebody doesn't like something, like on Instagram, they're probably just going to unfollow you. I mean, on TikTok, maybe they'll troll you, but on Instagram, they're just going to unfollow you and be like, oh, okay, maybe she's not my person. And we always want to remember that stumbling over our words is normal. Like that
Mhm.
humanizes us. We are not all AIs out here, right? We are human. And if you stumble over your words or you say the wrong thing or you have a typo, it humanizes not only you, but your brand.
Beautiful. And one thing that you said too is, sometimes people will just unfollow you. So what if the person, and I see this a lot, takes that personally? What if someone unfollows them and it just hurts them? Or what if no one is voting on their polls or leaving a question in their question box? When people start to take that personally, talk me through your angle, how you would coach someone through that.
Okay. So when it comes to people like asking you questions, I always say you have to train your community
Yeah.
to ask you questions. You have to train them to ask you questions. And the way that you can do that is literally ask yourself questions. Instagram allows you to ask yourself questions.
And
So
no one will
don't be
know.
afraid if you're just, yeah, we all do it. Just ask yourself questions and be like, okay, like here's what people have asked me. Or if people ask you questions in the DMs and then they're too shy to put it in the box, just put it in the box for them and then answer it. And the more questions that you answer like that, the more likely people are going to come in and be like, oh, okay, like I'm in this, like let me answer. And I also want to say separate yourself from your business. So, you saying stuff online and you showcasing your business is one thing, and it's another thing for people to follow or unfollow. And I also think, too, in the unfollowing, following game, is that I have had people that have unfollowed me and then a couple years later come back and they hire me. And so just because somebody unfollows you or unsubscribes or whatever to whatever you're doing doesn't mean that they're gone forever, but also it means that you're speaking very specifically to who you're wanting to attract. So anytime I have a high amount of people that are unfollowing me, I kind of get a little excited about it because it just means that I'm really honing in and specifically talking to a type of person, and that person is being attracted to me and staying with me.
I think that's such good advice because I know so many people do take it personally. And like you said, separate it. It doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
anything about you. And if someone unfollows, it's just a click of a button. It doesn't mean anything. I love that advice. I think that's so helpful. Okay, cool. So the next thing that I want to dive into, something that you said earlier, is having a call to action. So I love this because it's basically telling people what to do, right? When you have a post, you're telling people what you want them to do. Specifically for product-based business owners, a lot of times it is telling people to like purchase, go to the link in my bio, buy now, click here. So are there any other calls to actions that you can see for product-based business owners? And if we do use a lot of, buy now, go to my website call to action, how do you talk to people about not feeling salesy? Because that always comes up too. Well, I feel salesy. I'm talking about my products and asking for a sale. So kind of two questions in one, but talk me
Okay.
through that.
So I would say when it comes to call to actions, you can get creative. And right now, with a lot of automations, you can utilize many chats and you can actually, instead of saying like, go to the link in my bio, you can say something like comment necklace and I'll send you the link, or comment candle and I'll send you the link. And just thinking of your specific product and how they can send you the link. And then two, you can have a double call to action so that you don't feel as quote unquote salesy. So maybe you could say like, where would you wear this dress? Or where would you place this candle in your apartment or your home? And then you can say, P.S., you can grab it here at this. So like thinking about how you talk to your friends. How do you talk to someone when you're like, oh my God, look at this, right? You're like, oh my God, you should definitely get this. And so when you talk about it like that, you should definitely get this. And great thing is you can get it for 10% off today. Here's the link. And sharing it in a way, so thinking how you would talk to somebody in real life is very helpful, because honestly speaking, the reason that you feel quote unquote salesy is because we don't really stand around saying buy now,
Yep.
like we don't say that. We don't say, oh, just head to the link in my bio. No, like we say things like, oh, it's on my website if you're wanting it, or it's there, it's available today for 10% off, right? And it's something more natural and it doesn't sound like buy my product, right? And so it's more very like natural.
Yeah.
And when it comes to being salesy, I love this question because when somebody is feeling like you're being salesy, I always like to think of it as you're providing a service to somebody. So it can be literally the most simplest thing. It can be a notebook, like you're creating a notebook, but that notebook is providing a service to somebody. If I have my notebook and I write it in every single day, it's providing a service. And without my notebook, if I'm unable to write all of my notes in my notebook, then I'm not going to be able to fulfill my to-do list because I rely on my notebook. So it can literally be with anything. You're providing something. Like, I think about this vase that I had on my vision board. And it literally, I didn't know that it was the vase for my vision board. I just went and I got the vase. And then I was looking at my phone one day and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the one that I put on my vision board. And so anytime I see it, it just reminds me of like my vision board and the vision I have for myself. So even if you have a product and you're like, well, my product doesn't really do this, it can do something for somebody. It does provide a service. And yes, although it may be a material thing, that people get connections to material things. And sometimes it's something as simple as somebody bought this vase or whatever, and then now like they gave it to their mom or they gave it to somebody else, and it just can kind of go with you. So don't call yourself out and being like, oh my God, like I'm being so salesy, when you're really providing a service. And because you're providing the service, somebody else can then feel a certain type. It's like an emotion. You feel happy when you see certain things.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And that's something I tell people too is no matter what you sell, like you're solving someone's problem, which is exactly what you're saying. You're offering a service. So people even sometimes think like, well, jewelry is not really solving a problem. It's like someone feels more confident and more put together. Maybe they're rushing out the door and they can quickly put a necklace or earrings on and they feel better about themselves. That's solving a problem. Or even, candles. If people love candles because it helps them wind down after a crazy day and they're able to relax, you're solving a problem by creating that relaxing space. I love what you said that you literally had a product that was on your vision board. I think that's such a good mantra for product based business owners to say, my products are on someone's vision board. Someone is like waiting and dreaming about my products. So I absolutely loved how you said that. I think that is just something so awesome. Well, I think this was just such a great conversation. I want to end with one more question before we get to the wrap up questions. But you briefly talked about hashtags. So talk me through. I love how you said at least seven hashtags. How critical are hashtags? Like, do people really use hashtags? Are they dead? Are they not dead? Tell me more.
Okay, hashtags are definitely not dead, and it doesn't hurt to use them, right? You're
Yeah.
not getting punished. Instagram's not going to punish you. What you're doing when you utilize hashtags and SEO is you're making Instagram like algorithm easier for people to find you. And what I mean by that is when somebody thinks of like a word and they're like, oh, I'm looking up something. So if somebody's looking up a gift, right? And it's like a gift, mom gift or something for Mother's Day gift. And now you've utilized Mother's Day gift it as your hashtag. You're, up in the searches, right? You get a point up. And then if you utilize Mother's Day gift in your SEO, you're up a point. If you utilize Mother's Day gift in your words on your video, you're up another point. Now you're getting like more and more views based on the fact that you get specific about what it is that you're posting. So Instagram does have technology that scans videos and photos and categorizes them. So if you don't categorize your video or your photo by utilizing hashtags and SEO, then you're allowing Instagram to take control of your content and you're relying on them to really show your content to the right people. And so I always say with the Instagram Reels, I think the last 4 months, I really went in and did this strategy where I utilized the 7 hashtags, the long tail, very specific hashtags to what it is that I do. And in that time, I grew 3,000 followers.
Wow.
And I've had clients too that have had massive growth by really honing in on having those, not only the 7 hashtags, of course, like you got to think about each point, having that SEO too, and then also being very specific in the wording that you use in your videos, because all of this is the things that Instagram's looking at and they're able to bring it to the right people.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
And when it comes to your post, I would say like it's still good to do like 23 to 30 hashtags on static post. That hashtag strategy is specific for Instagram Reels.
Oh, so the 7 is for reels is what you're saying, and then
Yes.
use 23
Mm-hmm.
or so on your static posts. Okay, cool. Love that. Yeah, and love to hear
Mm-hmm.
how you got some incredible results. I mean, obviously from all the work that you're doing and experimenting and putting together and sharing with others, it's awesome to hear your experience of how that led to some incredible growth. And I know this conversation is just going to be so inspiring for people. It's been helpful for me just to hear and pick your brain and see how you explain things, how you coach people through things, your perspective on different items for Instagram. So it's been a pleasure to have you. Would love for you just to share with people where they can find you, how they can work with you, and how they can connect with you.
Of course, you can find me at Attaliah Strubel on all of my socials. If you want to get personal on TikTok, my husband and I have a couples TikTok, I guess, family TikTok, the Strubel family. So we're on there. It's like just a fun place. I'm like, it's my fun place to just do whatever. And then, as far as working with me, I have different offers, but if you're somebody that's really struggling with content and converting your content, I actually have a content monetization membership. And in the membership, I make content creation easy, meaning that every single week you get prompts for your content. And it's really just helping make that process easier. You get 2 trainings a month on different things that are happening on Instagram, and you don't have to worry about keeping up with the algorithm because you're in there and I give you the information that you need in order to really convert that content that you're creating online.
Love it. I'll make sure to link that in the show notes and highly recommend for people to jump on that membership. Sounds like such a great service. Well, thank you again for hanging out with me here today. So much fun having you. So thank you for being a guest on the podcast. And thank you to everyone listening for being a loyal listener to the Product Is podcast.